Hare Krishna. So, very warm welcome to all of you for today's session on the Bhagavad Gita. And today we'll be covering some very, very important aspects of the second chapter. And now we are moving into the last part of the second chapter in one sense. But in the last part, Lord Krishna covers some very beautiful, he substantiates the philosophy with some very beautiful examples. So those examples also we'll be covering. And because in the previous sessions, we have discussed about Sankhya philosophy, then we discussed the duties of a Kshatriya, then we discussed about why this Vedic knowledge, Bhagavad Gita is the essence of Vedic knowledge, why it is above the Vedas, the purpose of the Vedas. So all these aspects we discussed till now. But now we have already moved to the fourth part of the second chapter, and now we are moving to the last part of the second chapter, which is Sthita Pragya part, and we'll be covering some very beautiful examples given by Lord Krishna to substantiate the whole philosophy. But as we always do, we'll start our session with the prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So in our previous session, we discussed that why we have to rise above the platform of mental speculation. Lord Krishna, he spoke about Manogatan. In the last shloka of the previous session, we discussed about Manogatan. Manogatan means mental concoction. And we discussed that such people who are on that platform of mental concoction, they are called Munis. And we discussed that Muni means Naso Munir Yasya Matam Na Bhinnam. A Muni, his goal of life is to differ from other Munis or differ from the whole world. If whole world says something, he will say something else. And that is why we never trust a Muni. Munis are always mental speculators. They speculate, they concoct, and they give their own interpretation of everything. Whereas in spiritual life, there is no scope of speculation. It is not a concocted knowledge. It is a knowledge which is derived through parampara, through the lineage, which starts from the Supreme Lord Krishna. So that's what we discussed about Munis, because we should never ever trust a Muni. But today we'll be discussing about another kind of Muni. Okay, so we'll begin our discussion with text 56, shloka number 56 of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Dukheshvanudvignamana Sukheshu Vigataspriha Vitaragbhayakrodha Sthitadhir Muniruchyate. Dukheshvanudvignamana Sukheshu Vigataspriha Vitaragbhayakrodha Sthitadhir Muniruchyate. Translation: a person who is not agitated by material miseries and remains indifferent to material happiness, who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is said to be a sage of fixed intelligence. So we are into this part of the Bhagavad Gita where Lord Krishna talks about Sthitadhir or Sthit pragya. Pragya means intelligence. And we have discussed in our previous sessions that Bhakti Yoga is also called Buddhi Yoga, because we have discussed that the lowest platform of existence is bodily or sensual platform. Above that is mental platform. Above that is intellectual platform. And the highest platform of existence is spiritual platform. The senses and the mind, they are always restless. But above the mind, we have been given intelligence to control the mind and the senses. And intelligence can only be controlled by superior or higher knowledge. And that superior or higher knowledge is spiritual knowledge. So sthita pragya means when a person's consciousness, when a person's intelligence is fixed up at the lotus feet of Krishna. Because you see here in this shloka, it is mentioned, you can see on your screen, Dukheshu anudvigna mana. Dukheshu anudvigna mana. Anudvigna means agitated. And Dukheshu means misery. Sukheshu vigatasprihaha. And Sukheshu means happiness. Now, in our life, there will be sometimes misery and sometimes there will be happiness. That is how this material world is made up of. Both are part and parcel of our life. And these conditions are not according to our plan, isn't it? It's not that we plan happiness or we plan misery, or we give invitation to happiness or we give invitation to misery. No. Sometimes there will be misery and sometimes there will be happiness, even though we may not want it. It's irrespective of our desire, isn't it? So when such situations come, a person who is not agitated, he does not go overboard when he attains happiness, and even when he attains misery, he should not go overboard and take some drastic steps. Because why he will not get agitated? Because he is fixed up at the lotus feet of Krishna. He knows that happiness and distress are Krishna's concern. He just has to do his duty. He is not responsible for happiness or distress in his life. In fact, the consciousness of a pure devotee is that tatya anukampam susumikshamana bhunjan evatma kritam vipakam. Tatya anukampam. A devotee, a pure devotee always thinks in such a manner that tatya anukampam. Anukampa means mercy. It is a mercy of the Lord. It is a mercy of the Lord that I do not deserve any happiness, but Krishna has given me so much. And so much miseries can be there for me, but Krishna has reduced it to almost nil. A devotee knows that if a mountain is about to fall on us, Krishna will just reduce it to a small pebble. So a devotee is always conscious of this fact that tatyanukampam susumikshamana bhunjan evatma kritam vipakam. So a devotee is always engaged in in the consciousness of the Supreme Lord. His consciousness is fixed up at the lotus feet of the Lord. And he is like a soldier. He is like an army man, always on duty and very daring. When it comes to Krishna's service, when it comes to the mission of the Lord, he is daring. He is like a soldier, always active in the service of the Lord. And you see here in the shloka, the last sentence is mentioned, Sthita Dhir Muni Ruchyate. Now, we discussed in the previous session that Muni is a term which is used for mental speculators. And spiritual knowledge is never attained by speculation. Just like the law of the land in a country where we are living, we cannot speculate that these are the laws of the country. Can we speculate and know? No. The government gives and we have to follow. You can't say that I will speculate today that what I have to follow. No, you cannot do that. The king of the country decides the rules and we have to follow. Similarly, the laws of the universe, we cannot decide. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. Dharma is what is spoken by Krishna. We cannot decide what is dharma. We cannot decide the laws of the universe, the laws governing this creation. We simply have to follow what is spoken by the Lord. And that is why those who are mental speculators, they are very dangerous people. They speculate and mislead innocent public. So such people are called Muni, those who do the activity of speculating in the mind, because mind is restless, mind is crazy, and mind can generate any thought. But that is why above the mind there is intelligence. And intelligence develops by higher knowledge, spiritual knowledge. So this world is not created for us, neither it is created by us. This world is created for a purpose, and this world is created by the Supreme Lord for his purpose. And that is because we are not the controllers. It's he who is the controller. He is the creator. And we have to simply follow what he has said. And that is why we never believe in Munis. But here in the shloka, you see the last sentence, it is mentioned, Sthita Dhir Muni. Dhi means intelligence. And Sthita Dhi means fixed up intelligence. Okay, fixed up intelligence. Sthitadhir Muni is not an ordinary Muni. He is not a Muni who will be speculating. No. Sthitadhir Muni means a Muni who has finished his business of speculation, who is fixed up at the lotus feet of the Lord. He is called a Sthitadhir Muni. And one of the best example of Sthitadhir Muni is Narad Muni, our transcendental spaceman, our transcendental universal preacher. That is Narad Muni. So Narad Muni, he is not an ordinary Muni. He is a Sthita Dhir Muni, because his consciousness is fixed at the lotus feet of Narayan. Narad means, Nar means Narayan, and Da means one who gives Narayan to us. Maybe I'll tell you more about Narad Muni in future sessions. Narad Muni, he is the greatest personality in the universe. Many people, most of the people, they don't know about Narad Muni, how powerful and how great he is. The facilities that Narad Muni has got in this universe, no one in the universe has got such facilities. Even Lord Brahma, who is the secondary creator, because primary creator is the Supreme Lord Vishnu. But even Lord Brahma, So as we know, Lord Vishnu, he resides in Shvetadweep, in Shir Sagar. Shvetadweep is pole star. So Lord Vishnu resides there. So Lord Brahma also cannot approach Lord Vishnu just like that. No. But Narad Muni, whenever he wants, he can go and see Lord Vishnu. Whenever. That is his position. No demigods, no devatas, no personality in the universe has such position like Narad Muni. He is the greatest personality in the universe. Why? Because he's a pure devotee of Krishna. Narada, one who gives Narayan to us. Whatever we are hearing, Krishna Katha, the glories of Krishna, it is all given mostly by Narad Muni. And he travels all over the universe in all planetary systems. And in every planetary systems, he has his disciples. And all his disciples are pure devotees. Just like Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruv Maharaj. Now, Prahlad Maharaj's pastimes, it happened in the upper planetary system, in Bhuvahaloka. Dhruv Maharaj's pastime, it happened in upper planetary system. Most of these pastimes, our Vedas not only talk about earthly planet, they talk about the whole universe. So all the disciples of Narad Muni, they are pure devotees. In our earthly planet also, Vyasdev is a disciple of Narad Muni. So Narad Muni is a Sthita Dhir Muni. He is a Sthita Dhir Muni. And a Sthita Dhir Muni, he is always active in service of Krishna. He'll never be inactive because soul can never be inactive. Spirit soul, the characteristic of the spirit soul is activity. Spirit soul can never be inactive. And Narad Muni, he is such a spirit soul, such a devotee of the Lord. He is always active, super active, hyperactive in service of the Lord. And he preaches the glories of the Lord all over the universe. So a pure devotee means he's a soldier of Krishna. He has joined the army of Krishna. He is always active, 24 hours in the service of Krishna. Veet raga bhaya krodha. You see, Veet raga bhaya krodha. Veet means to give up. And rag means attachment, material attachment. Bhaya means fear. What is the fear in this material creation? The greatest fear which people have is death, isn't it? And everyone has to die one day. So rag, bhay and krodha. Krodha means anger. In the upcoming shlokas, Lord Krishna will give details about anger. We'll cover it in the next session, where Lord Krishna gives the whole hierarchy, the whole process of how in our consciousness anger develops. That whole hierarchy we will discuss in the next session. So Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha, a devotee, he is not attached to anything. So no rag. He is fearless because he has no fear of death. He knows that Krishna will protect me under all circumstances. Rakhe Krishna mare Krishna rakhe ke. If Krishna decides to protect, no one can kill. And if Krishna decides to kill, no one can protect. A devotee knows that. And that is why he is fearless. And krodhaha, and he is also above anger because he is pure at heart. So such a person is called a Sthit Dhir Muni. He is a fixed up Muni. He is not an ordinary Muni. We should never trust an ordinary Muni, and we should always surrender ourselves to a Sthit Dhir Muni. Because Krishna's mercy flows through Sthit Dhir Muni upon us. So we should never ever trust a normal Muni, an ordinary Muni, but we should surrender ourselves to a Sthit Dhir Muni. So that is what we are seeing here in this shloka. Now text 57, shloka number 57. Yah sarvatranabhisnehas tat prapya shubha shubham नाभिनंदति न द्वेष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता यः सर्वत्रानभिस्नेहस् तत्तत् प्राप्य शुभाशुभम् नाभिनंदति न द्वेष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. Translation: one who does not take pleasure when attaining something auspicious, nor laments when encountering something inauspicious, and remains completely unattached, is truly absorbed in the consciousness of the Supreme Lord. Now you see, the things that we discussed very similarly, but very similar to that, Lord Krishna, he is saying here, Yah sarvatra anabhisnehas. Sneha, the word sneha is coming here. Sneha means affection or something which we like, something which is dear to us. Anabhisnehas. So something which we like, something which is dear to us. Anabhisnehas means he is not affected or not attached to all these things. A pure devotee. Tat tat prapya shubha ashubham. Shubha and ashubha. Shubha means auspicious. Ashubha means inauspicious. Na abhinandati. Abhinandati. Abhinandati means to take pleasure, anand. Na dveshti, and dveshti means to hate or to envy, to hate. Tasya pragya pratisthita. As we know, this is sthit pragya part of the Bhagavad Gita. So pragya pratisthita means sthit pragya. Pratisthita means sthit, and pragya means buddhi or bhakti yoga. So tasya pragya pratisthita. So such a person, he is a sthit pragya who has all these qualities. Sarvatra anabhisnehas, who is not attached to pleasant or unpleasant circumstances, who is not attached to what he likes or what he does not like. He does not hate or he does not take pleasure in material things. And tasya pragya pratisthita. Such a person, he is called as a person with fixed intelligence at the lotus feet of the Lord. Because sometimes there are some things which we like and some things we may not like. Likes and dislikes are characteristics of the spirit soul. A dead body and a stone cannot like or dislike. Only a living entity can like or dislike, isn't it? So sometimes we may get something which we may like, and sometimes we may get something which we may not like, right? In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, we will see in the upcoming chapters, in the 9th chapter, Lord Krishna says that this material world is dukhalayam ashashvatam. Dukhalay. Dukhalay. Pustakalay means library. So in a pustakalay, you get pustak. Vidyalaya means school. So in a vidyalaya, you get vidya. Vidya means education. So in pustakalaya, you get pustak. In vidyalaya, you get vidya. So in dukhalaya, what are we going to get? Dukh. Dukh means misery. That is the characteristic of this material existence. We can't avoid it, even though we may want it, isn't it? And this material world has been compared by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita to an ocean, huge ocean, huge ocean. Now, how much ever good a swimmer we may be, if we enter the ocean, if we fall in an ocean, if we fall in the middle of an ocean, how much ever good a swimmer a person may be, he cannot cross the ocean by his own endeavor. No one can cross the ocean by flapping his own hands and legs. It's not possible. Even though a person may be the greatest swimmer, but by our human endeavor, we cannot cross an ocean. Now, when we are in an ocean, what is the solution? How are we going to surpass or cross the ocean? The only way we can cross the ocean is by external help. If a boat comes and saves us, then we'll be saved. Otherwise, it's not possible to cross the ocean by our own efforts. So what is that boat which will save us from this material existence? So it is mentioned that Samashrita ye pad pallav plavam. Pad pallav plavam. The boat which can take us across the ocean is Pad pallav plavam. Pad means lotus feet. So lotus feet of Krishna is the boat. If we catch hold of the lotus feet of Krishna, then we can cross this ocean of material existence very easily. Otherwise, it's not possible. So Samashrita ye pad pallav plavam mahat padam punya yasho murari. Murari means Krishna. So only by taking shelter, only by catching tightly to the lotus feet of Krishna, we can cross this material existence, which is like an ocean. And the only boat which can save us from this material ocean of misery is by catching hold tightly to the lotus feet of Krishna, by fixing our intelligence strictly at the lotus feet of Krishna. That is the only way. That is the method. And here Lord Krishna is saying, Tasya pragya pratishtita. So pragya pratishtita means a person whose intelligence, whose buddhi, whose consciousness is fixed up at the lotus feet of Krishna. And that is why he does not take pleasure in material pursuits. Why? Let us see. A very beautiful shloka, the 58th shloka now. In this, Lord Krishna gives a very beautiful example. Let us see what is the example. Text 58, shloka number 58. Yada sangharate chayam urmonganiva sarvashah indriyani indriyarthebhyas tasya pragya pratisthita. Yada sangharate chayam urmonganiva sarvashah indriyani indriyarthebhyas tasya pragya pratisthita. Translation. Just as a tortoise withdraws its limbs within its shell, similarly, a person who can withdraw his senses from sense objects is said to have fixed intelligence on the Supreme Lord. Very beautiful shloka, and you see such a beautiful example Lord Krishna is giving here. Yada sangharate cha ayam kurmo angani va sarvashaha. So Lord Krishna is giving example of a tortoise. Why example of a tortoise is given here? Because if you would have observed a tortoise, whenever it wants, it can move out its limbs out of its shell. And whenever it wants, it can withdraw its limbs within the shell. Tortoise has a hard shell. In fact, those tortoises who are big in size, sometimes they would withdraw their limbs within their shell, and their shells are hard. So sometimes it looks on the beach as if some rock or some stone is there, and there are sometimes some people go and sit on that. Right. But the characteristic of a tortoise is that tortoise can, whenever it wants, it can withdraw its limbs within its shell. So why this example is given? This example is given to substantiate a point that what is the quality of a transcendentalist? What is the quality of a pure devotee of Krishna? A pure devotee of Krishna is called a Goswami. Goswami is a word, is a term or a designation, a surname which is given to a pure devotee of the Lord. Nowadays, people keep it as surname, but no, it's not a surname. It's a surname which is awarded to a person who is a sannyasi or who is a pure devotee of Krishna. That's why generally sannyasis, they are called as Swami. Swami or Goswami. Why? Because they Swami means master. Go means senses. So a person who is a master of his senses, who can control his senses, he is called a Goswami or a Swami. A person who cannot control his senses, he is called a Godas. He is a slave of his senses. We discussed in our previous sessions that our body is compared to a chariot driven by 5 horses. These 5 horses represent the 5 senses. The reins or the ropes through which the horses are controlled, they represent the mind. And the chariot driver is compared to intelligence, buddhi. And we, the traveler, are sitting in the chariot as travelers. The spirit soul is the traveler in the chariot. So what happens is, we keep feeding the horses. And the horses, they become very strong. But we forget feeding ourselves. Everyone gives food to the body, but no one gives food to the soul. So spiritually we become weak and bodily we become strong. So sensually we become very strong, but spiritually we become weak. Whereas it should happen the other way around. Even though we may be bodily weak, but we should be spiritually very strong. Right? So Goswami means a person who is spiritually strong. And that is why he is able to control his senses. If horses become very strong, they'll start creating chaos. They'll start to drive the chariot in their direction. And that is why pure devotees are generally given the upadhi, or they are given the designation of a Goswami. Goswami means who can control his senses. And how he is able to control his senses? So the example is given here in this shloka, that a Goswami or a pure devotee of Krishna, or who is a Sthita Pragya, he uses his senses according to his plan. Because in the Vedic scriptures, the senses are compared to venomous serpents. They are compared to venomous or poisonous snakes. A poisonous snake is very dangerous because a poisonous snake does not want to be controlled. A poisonous snake wants to act loosely without any restriction. Senses are also like that because we keep feeding the senses. Whatever the eyes want to see, we show. Whatever the ears want to hear, we hear. Whatever the tongue wants to taste, we give. Isn't it? So the senses, they want to, because they have become strong, they want to act loosely without being controlled. So that is why senses are compared to poisonous snakes. And that is why a pure devotee of Krishna is like a snake charmer. So a snake charmer, what does he do? He'll break the teeth of the snakes, because poison gets emitted from the teeth of the snakes. So he'll break the teeth of the snakes so that although snakes are there, but they'll become ineffective. Right? So similarly, a pure devotee of the Lord, just like a tortoise, he uses his senses only for the service of Krishna. When service of Krishna is not there, he will not use his senses. Just like we have example of Lord Hanuman. Now Lord Hanuman, he when Lord Ram was present on this earthly planet, Lord Hanuman, he was always engaged in his service. He crossed the whole Indian Ocean, went to Lanka. He picked up a huge mountain and brought it for Lord Ramchandra. So when Lord Ramchandra was present on this earthly planet, Lord Hanuman was always active, hyperactive. But after Lord Ramchandra, he unwinded his pastimes and he went, uh, he went to the other universe to display his pastimes. So Lord Hanuman, after that, you see, he simply engaged in chanting the glories of the Lord. So till Lord Ram was present, Lord Hanuman was always active in his service. But now when Lord Ram is physically not present in this universe, Lord Hanuman, he is still active in his service, but chanting the holy names of the Lord. So that is the meaning of a pure devotee. He is engaged in the service of the Lord and he is able to use his senses only when there is service. Otherwise, he will withdraw his senses from sense objects. That's why this beautiful example of this beautiful example of tortoise is given, because tortoise, whenever it wants, it can move out its senses, and whenever it wants, it can withdraw its senses within its limb, within its shell. And that is what devotees also do. When Krishna's service is there, they'll be active. When Krishna's service is not there, they'll not be materially active, but they'll become spiritually active. Because activity is the symptom of the soul. Soul can never be inactive. So when Krishna's service is not there, they become spiritually active. But when Krishna's seva or service is there, they'll be materially active also. Now text 59, shloka number 59. One of the most important shloka of the Bhagavad Gita. Let us see. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinaha rasvarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinaha rasvarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Translation. The embodied spirit soul may restrict himself from sense gratification through self-restraint, but the taste for sense objects remains. However, by experiencing a superior taste in Krishna consciousness, inferior engagements in sense gratification cease. Now you see, very important shloka, very beautiful shloka. And again, Lord Krishna gives a very beautiful example that even though we may restrain ourselves from sense gratification, but the taste does not go. So this reminds me, a few years back, one of my disciples, he went to attend a camp. This camp was arranged by some people who practiced Ayurveda, and they had arranged this camp to treat diabetes, to reduce insulin in the body. So one of my disciples, he went to this camp, and when he came back, I asked that how was this camp? So it was basically a 15-day camp for those who are suffering from this disease called diabetes. So after he came back, he told me that Guru Maharaj, actually on the last day of the camp, people were asked, because it was a Thanksgiving ceremony on the last day. So people were talking about why they came here and what all they gained here, what was the benefit that they attained through this camp. So on the last day, many people came. So he told that everyone was mentioning only one point, that I came to this camp for one purpose. And what was the purpose? So that I may again start eating sweet. Because when a person is suffering from diabetes, he is told not to eat sweet. So every person who came to this camp, he had only one desire, that somehow or other his insulin should be reduced so that he can again start eating sweet. Now, what does this mean? This means that when we are diseased, we may be artificially restrained from certain food items. A doctor may tell us not to eat certain items, certain food items. And although artificially we may try to restrain ourselves from that food item, but the taste does not go. The patient is always looking after an opportunity to pounce on that food stuff whenever it is available for him to eat. isn't it? So artificially a spirit soul may be restrained from sense gratification, but the taste for sense gratification will not go. Why? Because activity is the constitution of the soul. Soul can never be inactive and soul can never be desireless. Spirit soul can never be inactive and spirit soul can never be desireless. So if we don't activate ourselves or if we don't engage ourselves in service of Krishna, if we don't engage ourselves in superior engagement, we'll automatically get engaged in inferior engagements. If we don't engage ourselves in service of Krishna, then automatically we'll get engaged in service of Maya. Okay. So that's what is mentioned here in this shloka. Vishaya vinivartante. Vinivartante means to restrain ourselves. Niraharasya. Nirahar. Ahar means to give food. So we may restrain ourselves from sense gratification. We may not give food to the senses temporarily. But rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva. If there is no superior taste, if we do not develop higher taste, then this process will not last long. So until and unless we develop higher taste, until and unless we develop superior taste, inferior taste will not go. Because activity is the constitution of the soul. Spirit soul means activity. Spirit soul means these are symptoms of the spirit soul. Activity, desires, these are all symptoms of a living entity. You cannot become desireless. You cannot become inactive. So we have to become active. We have to be active. We have to have desires because desires are natural for a living entity. But we have to purify our desires. That is the goal of human life, to purify our desires. From material desires, we have to move to spiritual desires. From desires for ourselves, we have to move to what are desires of Krishna. Rather than fulfilling our material desires, we start to fulfill desires of Krishna. So that is called param drishtva, higher taste, superior taste. In fact, our great Acharya, one of our great Acharya, Yamunacharya, he says that Yadavadhi mama chet Krishna padaravinde Nav rasa dham anudyuturantu masi tadavadhi bat nari sangame smarya mane bhavati mukh vikara shushtu nishthi vanam cha. So he says that since I have been attracted to the lotus feet of my beloved Krishna, whenever I think of sense gratification, I spit on that thought. You see? So if we develop higher taste, if we develop superior engagement, only then inferior engagements will subside and they will cease. So the goal of life is not to become desireless. The goal of life is to develop higher desires. To move from material sense gratification, we have to move to higher platform of gratifying the senses of Krishna. Desires for pleasure of Krishna. That is the meaning of param drishtva. And once a person is attracted by the beauty of Krishna, Krishna means all attractive. Once we are attracted to Krishna's beauty, we'll never be attracted by any other beauty in the material world. So that's what Lord Krishna is telling here, that we have to develop higher taste, higher attraction to Krishna. Text 60, shloka number 60. Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipashchitaha indriyani pramathini haranti prasabham manaha. Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipashchitaha indriyani pramathini haranti prasabham manaha. Translation. O Arjun, the senses are so strong and powerful that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a learned man who is endeavoring to control them with the knowledge of discrimination. Again, a very important shloka. So what is Lord Krishna saying here? Yatato hyapi kaunteya. Yatato means a person who is endeavoring, who is trying to do that. What is he trying to do? He api kaunteya. So Lord Krishna is telling Arjun, kaunteya, purushasya vipashchitaha. Purushasya vipashchitaha. Vipashchita means a learned person, a knowledgeable person. So purushasya means of a person who is knowledgeable, who is intelligent, uh, who is learned. Indriyani pramathini. Indriyani means senses. The senses are pramathini. They are so powerful. They are so strong. Uh, they are so powerful. They are so adamant that haranti prasabham manaha. Haranti means to carry away. To carry away the mind, to carry away the consciousness of a person. So Lord Krishna is saying that senses are so strong that they carry away the consciousness or the mind of even of a learned person. Even a learned person gets swayed by sensory pursuits, sense gratification. During earlier times, nowadays we see boats or ships, they have electronic motor through which they control the ship. But during earlier times, these electronic motors were not there. So these ships will have sails. These sails are uh, huge screens made of thick cloth. And these sails were used to change the direction of a ship. So the sailor, because we don't know which direction the wind will be blowing, isn't it? And if the sails are not arranged properly, the wind will take the ship in its own direction. So there used to be many sails in a ship, and a sailor would change the direction of these sails so that the wind gets reflected through these sails, and then the ship can be directed in the direction in which it has to move, or in which they want the ship to be moved. Irrespective of whichever direction the wind is blowing, they can direct the ship in their direction, right? So if we are not able to direct the senses according to our plan, then the senses will start directing us according to their plan. Their plan in the sense, inferior engagements. That is why we have to be spiritually active. We have to develop spiritual strength, because only by spiritual strength we can conquer this bodily platform of or sensual platform of existence. So as we have discussed in our previous sessions also, that this body is compared to a chariot driven by 5 horses. So if horses become very strong, they'll start driving the chariot according to their desire. And then it will be chaotic situation. So that is why we have to develop higher engagement. And here it is mentioned that Purushasya Vipaschitaha, even a learned person, even a person with knowledge, even a person who knows the discrimination, still sometimes he may get swayed by sensual platform. Even the senses can carry away the consciousness or mind even of a learned person. So what to talk of those who are not learned? So to develop knowledge is the first thing, because intelligence works on the platform of knowledge. But along with that, we also have to develop spiritual strength, which is called Atma Bal. And how do we develop spiritual strength? So we develop spiritual strength by Shravanam and Kirtanam. Spiritual knowledge. By Shravanam, we develop spiritual knowledge. And Kirtanam means chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So by chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and by Shravanam, by hearing Krishna Katha, we develop spiritual strength. And when we develop spiritual strength, then we rise above this bodily platform, we rise above this sensual platform, and that's how we are able to control the senses. Otherwise, even though a person may be learned, but if he does not have spiritual strength, he'll not be able to control the senses. And anytime he gets swayed by the waves or urges of these senses. And it's very dangerous to get swayed by the senses. Human life is meant for higher engagements. Human life is meant for Krishna realization. So that's what we are seeing here. We'll stop here. Now we are moving to the next part of the second chapter. Of course, we are in the fourth part, but now we are moving into the last part. And in the last part of the second chapter, Lord Krishna gives very beautiful examples. And in the next session, we'll also be covering the classification of how a spirit soul, how his degradation happens to anger. So all these things we'll be discussing. So we'll stop here. We'll continue our discussion in the next session. Now, if anyone has any question, they can raise their hand. On Zoom, you have an option of raising your hand. And on YouTube, you can put your question in the comment section. I'll take up your questions now. Okay. Good. So no question today. So we'll stop here. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming for today's session. Hare Krishna.